Good afternoon, everybody. Shavua Tov. It's a new week and it is time for new editions of the Israel Brief. With me, Rolene Marks, brought to you by these guys, Lay of the Land. And we bring you original content from Israel and surrounds every single day. Check us out. If you want that news from Israel that you might not see in the mainstream media, you're going to get it right here on the Israel Brief and online on our website. But let's take a look at those top stories making headlines, and we begin with tensions on the Temple Mount yesterday. Yesterday was Tisha B'Av. It is the day in the Hebrew calendar that marks the destruction of the two temples, and it is a day where Jews around the world not only fast but spend the day in memoriam and reflection and remembrance. Now, yesterday there were tensions on the Temple Mount, which is seen as a holy site both for Jews as it is the site where our temples once stood, but also for Muslims who have built the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock on top of the ruins of the temple. Many Jews gathered at the Kotel Plaza, that's the Wailing Wall Plaza, to pray, and some started to ascend the Temple Mount. At least 1,000, maybe more, ascended the Temple Mount to pray peacefully. However, clashes did break out between Palestinians and police. Palestinians apparently were warned on social media to try and disrupt any prayers or any ascension of Jews onto the Temple Mount. Palestinian Red Crescent reporting that there were a number of injuries. However, they weren't serious and were treated on site. However, Jordanian and Egyptian officials condemned the presence of Jews on the Temple Mount, saying that this is a disruption to the status quo, which of course has resulted in a lot of discussion and debate in Israel. Is it worth it to maintain that status quo? However, the Temple Mount remains a hot point in the flare-ups and the tension between Israelis and Palestinians. In other news related to Tisha B'Av, our President Isaac Herzog and Prime Minister Naftali Bennett have condemned the presence of Orthodox who invaded a prayer session of egalitarian worshippers in that area that has been assigned to them on the Kotel Plaza. This has also been a hotbed of tension between the Israeli government, or the former Israeli government rather, and American Jewry, and it has really been a point of tension. However, this government has made it a priority to ensure that as part of their criteria, they will make sure that there is a place for egalitarian prayer. And hopefully there will be no more disruptions to people choosing however they want to pray. Calm has been restored and everything is back to normal today. While we thought we would be back to normal with the coronavirus, it appears that we aren't, and Israel's morbidity range is rising. At the moment, Israelis are concerned with high levels of infections. However, our serious infections have kind of plateaued. There are at about 66 people who are serious, many of them reported to be unvaccinated. At least a third of all new infections are students who haven't been vaccinated. And the health ministry has been debating whether or not to reintroduce the green passport for any events with over 100 people to try and curb the spread of the virus. It was also discussed that there was a possibility of closing Ben Gurion Airport except for essential travel. This has been discarded. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has said that anybody flouting the coronavirus pandemic laws will be fined heavily, and that the police will now be tracking anyone who is in quarantine, and anyone who breaks their quarantine will be hit with criminal charges. And our last story takes us to our favorite place. Yes, back onto Twitter with the head of Human Rights Watch, Ken Roth, who is no stranger to controversy, especially when it is related to Israel and all things Jewish. He has been at it again. Yesterday, he tweeted out something that has drawn the ire of many people right across the board, from Haaretz to UN Watch to the Democratic majority in Congress in the United States. And it's something that we're going to see interesting as to how Human Rights Watch choose to deal with Mr. Roth. So here is what he tweeted, and I read you directly. He says, "Anti-Semitism is wrong, and it long preceded the creation of Israel. But the surge of UK anti-Semitism incidents, it dismisses the connection that the conflict in Gaza and gives the lie to those who pretend that the Israeli government's conduct does not affect anti-Semitism." So I read that to you directly from his tweet, and basically what he did was blamed the Israeli government for anti-Semitism. This resulted in an absolute outcry. Many people saying, well, you know, why the but? And saying, would you say that violence against the Asian community has preceded the Uyghur community being rounded up in China? But would you use the same for any minorities who are discriminated against, members of the LGBTQ community, members of the black community, members of any other minority except for the Jews, blaming Jews for anti-Semitism? So this has exposed that the head of Human Rights Watch, a human rights organization, perhaps does not have the best interests of the safety of Jews at heart. And Samuel Sokol, who has written an article in Haaretz, which Roth was trying to quote from, says that he absolutely did not mean what Roth is trying to put out in his tweet. He says, under no circumstances should the Israeli government, whatever policies are in Israel, be blamed for the surge in anti-Semitism, whether it's in the UK or anywhere else around the world. So the onus is on you, Human Rights Watch, to decide what you want to do and how you want to move with the head of your organization going forward. This is not the first time. It certainly will not be the last time. Roth tried to mitigate that by saying, you know, it's interesting how Jews around the world have seen that he's, or have taken it that his tweet is anti-Semitic. Mr. Roth, if you're watching this, and hey, there's a possibility he could be, gaslighting Jews and dismissing our concerns about anti-Semitism is not helping your case. And if you watching this are a donor to Human Rights Watch, we ask you to carefully consider where your donor money is going. So those are the top stories making headlines here in Israel. We have our original content up on our site at www.layoftheland.online. We're on Facebook. If you're viewing this, please share. We think we're being censored by Facebook again. So if you share this, you really help us at Lottel's site. While you're there, give us a like, give us a follow. If you are on YouTube, please help us get our news out from Israel by subscribing and clicking on that red subscribe button. And if you're on Twitter, hit us up with a hello and retweet us, and definitely follow us at Lay of the Land with a digit 5. That's Lay of the Land with a digit 5. So with today's edition of the Israel Brief, I'm Rolene Marks, and my soapbox and I will see you round about this time tomorrow.